Okay, hello and welcome. It's Rick Baxter with Cost Control Software. Hey, in this video, we're going to take a look at quality control for your Microsoft Dynamics. You see it right there, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. I'm assuming you've probably downloaded this from AppSource to install the quality control to add this to your Dynamics. And so I'm going to take you through the setup today of quality control, and it's pretty straightforward. So, but I'm going to use this guide. Now, if you don't have the guide that I have here on screen, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. You can give me a call. There's my phone number down there at Cost Control Software, but this is on the AppSource website for quality control. You should see the setup guide there, and just get yourself a copy of this guide and follow along as we go through it. I'm going to skip over some of the upfront stuff here. I'm going to skip over the descriptions. I want to get right to this part here. What page am I on? Page 5, which is a little bit about the design of the software. Quality control is designed for two main things. One is checking your raw materials as you receive them in. So that's basically from a purchase order. You would receive it into a QC location. You would do the testing in that QC location, and if it passes, then you would transfer it into your usable inventory. If it fails, you would probably return it to your vendor. So that's the process on raw material receiving. On the finished goods, if you're using this for production and finishing your finished goods, it's kind of the same thing. You're going to do a production order, and then you're going to post that finished good into a QC location as you produce the item. So from your output journal or your production order journal, you would then record the QC location that you're putting it in, so the guys in the QC lab can test it. So they would do the testing. If it fails, then it goes back to rework. If it passes, you move it on into available inventory so that you can ship an invoice the product. So that's the flow. Everything, though, about QC is about testing and being able to compare the test against your standards. Your standards are what we call specifications. And so those specifications have to be set up before you start doing tests. So in this video, I'm going to take you through some of the back end of QC and the things that you need to set up to actually run the software. So yes, sorry, there are some things you have to do to set up the software, but it's not too bad. Follow along. This shouldn't take more than about 15-20 minutes to kind of walk you through what's here in the manual. So I'm going to scroll down and use this as a guide. So the first thing is, by now the software should be installed. So you should have completed the installation portion of the system, and now we're going to use the setup guide to kind of make sure that we're using the right parts of the software. So the first thing that I want to call your attention to is the role center. I want you to go to the quality control role center, and let me just move this out of the way and I'll show this to you live. So here under settings, there is an option right here for quality control role center, and it should be on your list. So it should be somewhere on your list of all these different role centers. I've added quality control. That's covered in the installation guide. If this is not on your list, give me a call, because that should be there. Okay, so that should come in pretty much automatically when you install the software, and if it's not, we can walk you through how to get that on the list. But you'll want to select that role center so that when you're looking at the screen, it will look very much like this. So this is our Dynamics 365 Business Central. We're in the quality control area where we have our testing, our compliance views, our testing numbers, our quality specifications. This is the menu that you should see as you begin to use the software. So be sure first and foremost that you are into the right role center. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you'll see it there on the menu, and it will say quality control, and you should be good to go. Okay, now a couple things about setup. There's more than a couple. There's several things about setup. So the first thing is you need a number series. So in other words, what series are you going to use when you do a test? Test number one, test number two, test number three. Could be as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I, however, like to put a number. Let's see if I've got a sample in here. Let me just go to the live software. I'll show it to you there. So I'm going to go to our number series. So that is this choice up here, the search bar. And if I just type NO and put period, you'll see it's right here. Okay, so number series. And somewhere on here I should have, if I go down a little bit for QC, I've added this already. Here it is, QC. You would be doing new. If this is the first time you've installed it, you would want to add a new number series. So just pick new and add a quality control. You can call it anything you want, just quality control number series, or I just called it quality control lot serial number test series. And then you'll want to set the starting numbers. So those are done in a kind of a subtable underneath the number series where you will actually set the first number. Now you could be as simple as number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I put a QCT, quality control test, and then the number sign, dash, I put several zeros there, and I increment by 1. Okay, and I don't put an ending number. I don't think we want to cap this thing out. So in this case, I don't put an ending number. I do have a last use date and the last number. These probably will be blank when you start out to begin with. Okay, so that, and there's one other thing I want to mention here. Go back to that one here. Okay, quality control. I want to point out here on the right side that the default numbers, you see that default numbers, that is checked. So in other words, when I'm putting in a new test, it goes and brings in the default numbers right out of this list. Very important to have that in there. I don't have the next one checked. I've got mine set up in such a way that I do not allow for any user to put in any old number they want to use. I want to use it very sequentially. So I want it to automatically number my testing. And so leave this one unchecked, and then it will put in a number, the next number in the sequence, starting from 001. Okay, so let's go back to the study guide right here. Okay, so that's the setup. So there's some pictures in your study guide with those numbers. I wanted to show it to you live. Okay, second thing that you need to set up is your locations. So you'll want to set up some default QC location codes so that as you receive in, let's say, raw materials, where you're going to put it, you're going to put it into a location called QC, so that you can test it there, and it's not in your main warehouse or main use inventory usage location, whatever that might be. So let's go in. I'm going to show you here under locations. So let's move out of the way. We're done with number series, and you'll find locations right here on the menu. Make it nice and simple here. So here's locations. You should have some already in here. You probably won't have QC. So just pick new. So pick the choice for new and then add QC, and I'll just show you what mine looks like. So I've got a QC location, and I just called it QC location for testing. You could call it quarantine or testing location, whatever you whatever you want to call it, but I just keep it simple. And you could even separate these. I had one customer that had a QC raw material and a QC finished good. They had two locations, and they always put their finished goods into the finished good location, and then the raw materials were always received into that QC, and that kind of gave them a little more separation when you looked at the item card to see quantity on hand per location. It kind of gave you a little more information there. Okay, is there anything else? I don't think you have to add anything other than that. I mean, that's it. Okay, so then just leave the location card, and it should now show up here on your list. Pretty straightforward. All right. And now we're going to get into a few more of the main setups for quality control. So we're going to go into the QC setup and do that next. So I'm just kind of following along in your study guide. I'm on page 10 right now for the quality setups that need to be completed. Okay, so let's go out of the guide for just a minute and I'll show you how to get there. So right up here, you just type in, let's just do QC. We'll see if we can find it. Setup. It didn't find that. Setup. Let's see. Let me go back to that guide. I think I've got it spelled differently. Oh, quality control setup. Okay, silly. So we just type quality. That might find it. Quality, there it is right there. Okay, quality control setup. Now yours is going to probably come in blank. So there's some things that you will need to add here. So it does show you the current version of our software is displayed right there on screen. Then you will put in the test number series, which is what we just set up. So if I do the drop down here, this is where we just put in the number series. So this is for auto numbering each test. You'll put that in. I like to make it required that QC requirements are required. The default location is going to just be QC because you may have multiple locations and this puts in a default. Test line comments are going to be allowed. Default value for ignore. There's some screen tips very helpful here on each of these choices. But if you set it up pretty much like we've got in the book, I think you'll be just fine to begin with. Update uncertified, update on certified final, that kind of stuff. And so you'll want to get that, so just those few fields there. Now, that's the first part. Let's go back here. So that's how you get there. That shows you the setup. So I've got all this in your study guide, and you can look at the answers on what each of these choices does there. Okay, let's talk about some of the back end things. So the first thing that you're going to set is the measures. What are you testing? You got to figure out what you're testing for, right? So in fact, in the book, you'll see I've got like accuracy, appearance, density, tone. So this is where that is done. So let me move this out of the way. So we've got some things to set up here. So quality measures is the first one that you'll set up. And here's some samples. Now, don't just copy what I've got. You put in what makes sense for you and your business, okay? Accuracy, appearance, density, tone, what do you test? I've seen people test for weight, height, length, pH factors. I have no idea what your product is or how you might test it, but these are the things that you test for. And I will point out on these tests, some of them can be actually numeric type, where it's a number between like accuracy is between 27 and 32. That's a number, and it's a number range, actually a low and a high range. You'll see that in a minute. Or it could be a visual inspection. It could be just appearance. And then you would want to have what we call a list. So is it clear? Is it broken? Is it what just from the inspection, what is the value? So if you have a list, this is where you can edit the list. Right here under quality control measures, we can edit the list. And let's bring this one up here. This is list. Oh, edit the list. Well, oh, I'm sorry. I'm editing the list. It's the result list right here. So it's a result list, and you'll see my sample, really simple. I have good, fair, and poor. And good and fair both pass. They're in conformance. But poor, if I do a visual inspection and it's poor and I put in poor as the answer, that's going to be a non-conforming grade. And it's going to indicate that right on that test line. You'll see the test line in a minute if you haven't gone through the workflow yet. Okay, so you'll set up, and it could be true or false, it could be yes, no answers, whatever you want to have as far as a list. Just put that here in your list results if the testing type is list. Makes sense? Okay, let's go back. So that's the first thing, and then methods. So you'll want to set up next methods. I think that's next in the book here. Let me just go down. Methods. Okay, so this could indicate the type of test that you're doing, or maybe where the test is performed. Or you see I have like a scale, what scale you use. Scale number 2 is where you're going to do this particular test. So we set those up. Let's go take a look. So that's called methods. So I'll bring up a list of methods, and yours is going to come up blank. So you're going to put some new ones in, or you're going to edit the list, and you're going to have, you know, A, B. Let's put scale in here. I didn't have scale. S-C-A-L-E, scale number 2. Okay, description, scale number 2. Things like that. So you'll just specify, you know, whatever this list is. So, and it's not required, it's just informational, but I think you'll like having this additional comments about each of the test lines. When you actually start doing the test, it'll tell you exactly where to go and do that specific test. So build that list in your software. And as you're watching this video, I recommend, as I'm thinking about this, don't just sit down and watch this straight through. You want to actually set some of these up. You know, watch a segment and then go into your software and add these quality control methods. So hit the pause button. So down somewhere below or somewhere on the screen here, there's going to be a pause button. And then you can pause the video, go into your software, and maybe add some methods. Just try it. Add just 2, just to kind of get a sense for how it works. And then the quality requirements. So I don't know if I'll put that in here. Well, I will mention this. Okay. So in the QC requirements, this is a little tricky, and maybe this is a little advanced, but I'll just kind of explain what this is doing. This is saying that if you receive in in this case, a 17-inch monitor, that's something that we're testing, then quality testing is going to be required. There's a little check mark on the purchase order line that'll indicate that we want to test this monitor. Anytime we receive it, we want to test it. So when you receive it in, you want to be sure it goes into that QC location so that you can perform a test on it. So it's just a little reminder. So all you have to do is put in the part numbers that you want to flag as testing required. You'll see it on the PO, little check mark there, and this is what controls that. Okay, that's all there is to it. Okay, so just add a few for your kind of as you're learning the software, just go ahead and do that. And then security roles, this is a one-time pop. You just run it once, and it's going to go ahead and set up the security role for your system administrator for a QC, and it's done. In fact, I think for some of you on maybe using the AppSource version of this software, that may happen automatically. So you may not need to run this option. So it may just have already been done, and it won't hurt anything if you run it again. Doesn't change anything. So no problem there. Okay, let's go back to our study guide. So that is a little bit on the methods. So I covered some of the methods, some of the QC requirements. If you want to have those items required, this is fully optional. I mentioned that here in the book. And then last thing you've got to do, and this is a big one, is you've got to set up your inventory items, the specifications. What are you going to be testing against? Now I'm guessing that you will have a book somewhere with all those specifications clearly identified. Books are on 3x5 cards, or you've got it written down somewhere that when we test this item, these are the things that we test for. So find that information actually probably even before you begin, because one of the things that we're going to need to do is take that information from your manual system and put it into the computer so that we can start doing it all electronically. Okay, and let's just set one up so you can see it. So move this out of the way. And I'm going to go into the main menu, and right here, that's why we've got it in the front, because this is very, very important. This is your quality specifications right there. And I've got some already set up. Maybe I'll just show you one. I think because you could, all you do to add them is just pick new. But let me just bring one up that's already in here and you can just see it. So if you pick new, the screen will be blank. Okay. If it's, you can also copy. There's some functions to copy other specifications. If it's similar, you'll see that it'll make sense to copy the specs on other new ones. Okay, so select your part number. Now let's do this first example. Don't do it for a customer. Just do it for one of your own specifications for some inventory item. In my case, I'm doing a 17-inch monitor. Okay, so put that in. And there's one more thing I think I need to mention right here on this item number, because I've had people call me and say, well, where's all my inventory? So the item number that we're testing needs to be a part number that we use lot number tracking on. Now you can set it with freeform so it's not mandatory, but you do want to have the lot number turned on, the item tracking on the item, and then it'll show up here in your list. So you'll see maybe a shorter list. See, that's a pretty short list. And so all your inventory items won't show here. We're only interested in testing the lot or serial number type inventory with quality control. Although it's not mandatory. I've had people want to use the software without putting a lot or serial number in. I'm not real sure how you know which item you tested if you don't put in the lot or serial number, but that's the concept is here. You will want the item number. It'll then, of course, look up the description. You'll put in pieces. It'll probably come in as either new or under development, first time in, and then eventually you'll certify it once you have completed the test lines, which I'm going to tell you about next. So, in fact, I'm going to put this under development just so we can maybe make a couple changes. Okay, the picture comes in automatically. That's from your inventory master file. So your item master already should have the picture of the item that you're testing. So it's optional whether you put the picture in, but I find it's a lot of people like the concept of actually having a picture there so that you can kind of verify that you're testing the item you intended to test. Okay, although realize I'm not in the testing area here. I covered that in the workflow. This is all the setup side. So this is just how do we set up and get prepared to do our test. So this is where you're going to start entering down here. Yours will come in blank to begin with. So just go to the first line and select from your list of measures. So that's why we did that initially, is you will want to select from your list of measures what you're going to be testing for first. So in my sample, I'm testing for accuracy, and the method is test B, whatever that might mean to you. Okay, you can even set in conditions. Like I've got one test down here that's greater than 32 degrees. It's optional. Okay, it's informational. If you want to have a testing unit measure, you can specify that as well. This test is a numeric test. So when it's numeric, then you will actually set a lower and upper limit to the values. In other words, when you do a test, it has to be between, in this case, 74 and 84. And you can also put in the normal or nominal value, which is 77. So that's important to put in. This is what the typical test value is, 77 right there. Now there are a few other columns, last date tested, whether it's outsourced. I'm going to suggest here at the beginning, leave all those blank. Just let them default in as they come in. All right. So go in, you're going to add a part number, okay, the item that you want to set up the specs for. We're doing the setup. We're not doing a test here. This is the setup in preparation of doing a test. So you'll put in accuracy, appearance, which is a list. Notice that's the list, so it pulled that from the setup that we just did a moment ago. Pulls in the density and tone. So that's all I'm testing for here. And I could add additional tests if I needed to. Okay, so I could add more tests here, just however many tests you want to perform on your items. This is totally up to you um, as far as the level of detail that you want to track on these tests. And just again, realize all you're doing is setting up the specifications. We're not doing a test here. That's done in another video I've got that show you how to actually record the test results. That's in the workflow video. Okay, so let me see if I want to mention anything else here. This is where we set up the specifications. Mentioned that. I showed you those things. You can have it specific to a customer. I would recommend start off with just your basic inventory item internal test, not customer specific test. That's a more advanced topic. You can, and then, one of the things you do need to do is change the status to certified. So after, this is important, I'm glad I saw that. So after you have entered your information and you're happy with the design, then just like you do with your bill of materials and your routing within the item master file, go ahead and change this to certified. And that'll lock in this layout for testing. And you can only test items that are certified. So if it's under development, we don't want to do a test on it. Only the ones that are certified can we actually perform a QC test, do an actual test on that item. Okay, glad I mentioned that. And then there is a section in your book that does talk about versions. I think I'm not going to get into that here in this particular video. If you do need version tracking, do go through the manual because it does document it pretty clearly. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention here. There is a lot information card, which, let me see if I've got a sample in mind. Let's go back to the Roll Center. Maybe just click here, takes you out of the specs. So these are the specs. I've only got, about 6 set up in my system. A lot of information. Do I have any in my sample? Oh, I do. Okay, so this should come in automatically for you, these lots. So as you receive them in or produce them, you should get entries here to record for each item. So this is the item number, and this is the lot number. So it generates kind of a lot card, and it will show you how many on hand you have of that lot. So it's kind of handy to see this information right here on screen. They just call it a lot card. This is actually probably more out of the box NAV. We're just launching and showing it from the quality control granule because this is part of the way the NAV and Business Central displays that information automatically. Okay, and then let's see if we got anything else I want to mention here. A lot of information, and I think that's it. Okay, there is a little more detailed process here. I'm not going to go through this. This is kind of, I think this is in your workflow guide as well. That'll take you through the processes of lot numbers and receiving and so forth. Okay, and security now with your Dynamics 365 Business Central. This is This is all automatic. So we used to have to do some install processes to set up that security, and now that is all automatic. And that should complete your setup. So once you have gone through what I've shown you, I would be sure to add at least 4 or 5 specifications, at least get 4 or 5 items in there before you start trying to perform any tests at all, so that you've got the benchmark to test against. But here's our support page. Our contact information is right there in your book. There is more information on our website about quality control. We certainly want to thank you again for your purchase of quality control. And if you have any kind of questions or comments about the product, call us. We love to hear from you. If you like the product, call us. If you don't like the product, call me. I want to hear about that just as much. I think you're going to love the product, but call and let's talk about it. Whatever you need, just call us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and that kind of completes the setup process. Go to the workflow video next and actually start doing some testing. Thanks so much.